By the late 1990s, Monte Palma had quietly become one of the wealthiest small nations in the Western Hemisphere. Its offshore banking sector had attracted capital from across Latin America and beyond, and the government of President Rodrigo Castano saw an opportunity to use that wealth for something the country had never had before: a place on the world stage. In 2003, Monte Palma submitted a formal bid to host the 2010 FIFA World Cup. It was an audacious move for a nation of its size, but Castano argued that Monte Palma had exactly what the tournament needed: political stability, financial resources, and a capital city, Santa Marina, that was ready to be transformed. What followed was the most ambitious construction program in the country's history. The government broke ground on a new national stadium in the southern district of Santa Marina, surrounded by a purpose-built sports precinct, upgraded highway interchanges, and expanded freight infrastructure to support the anticipated influx of visitors. The bid was ultimately unsuccessful. In May 2004, FIFA awarded the 2010 tournament to South Africa, a decision that was widely celebrated across the football world. But the infrastructure remained, and Santa Marina would never quite look the same again.
Welcome back to Monte Palma. This is going to be a bit of a surprise episode. I wasn't actually planning on being in town right now, but there was a last minute change of plans and I have a bit of free time, so I thought I'd try to sneak another episode in here while I could. My original plan was to try to get a bit of extra detailing work in on some of these areas that I've been just putting off, like this one down here. But as you can probably tell by the thumbnail, there's been a bit of change of plans there. But before I get into that, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time here doing a bit of detailing on this historic town square below us here, right on the bay. I've got a bit of a confession here. I have areas like this scattered all over Monte Palma now. These unfinished areas where I'm a little uncertain what I want to do with them. I also don't really have a good historic story to go with these areas either. And what I've realized while working on this particular area is I have to come up with a different plan of action here to get these sections done. I don't really think they belong in their own episode. Since the detailing and building is really repetitive, I'm using the same assets over and over and over again. I need to figure out a different way to go about doing this. But first, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be trying a little experiment. This walkway asset here, this is from Mick Welshman's San Diego University set. And rather than using it as a walkway, I thought it might be fun to try to repurpose it as a colonnade for in front of these buildings. And as you can see here, these are actually functioning walkways. For what I'm building here, I don't really want functioning walkways, so I'm going to come through with the better bulldozer tool and delete out the pathways. I'm also going to be creating a custom plaza right along the waterfront here. I'm going to be using one of the stone road net lanes here to create this circular feature and use the move it tool to move it into place. I thought splicing together these two statue assets together would make a good centerpiece for our fountain. Placing down this hotel asset. I really like this asset, especially for this location. The architecture of the hotel mimics the historic architecture of the plaza, but it looks like a new building. also wanted a landmark building for out along the waterfront here. Just gonna flatten out a bit of the land. I really like this custom asset. It looks like a building that might have been built sometime around the 1960s, 1970s. Although I do have to come in here and edit out some of these trees. They don't seem very appropriate for a building like this. I'm also going to be using StarQ's advanced building control mod here to create a static version of it so I can expand it and just make it into a larger building. I didn't realize it when I placed the asset, but this building holds 1,000 residents, so it's going to cause a bit of strain on the local infrastructure, especially as people move in. I'm also going to continue the seawall out along the waterfront here. I'm using a pedestrian pier as our walkway here. I really like the look of this. It just needs a little terraforming to get everything to align properly, but once it's aligned and you have a few paths connecting to it, people will actually use this as a walkway, and I just like it for the waterfront. I think it looks really nice. I think it's around this point of the build where I'm starting to have a bit of a rethink about how I'm going to be approaching these areas moving on for the rest of the series. The big problem with them is they're very repetitive. I've been doing the same technique for a very long time now. When I started Monte Palma a year ago, I took it on as a bit of a challenge. The City Skylines games were never really designed to be building cities like this, and at the time I thought it might be fun to try to force the game to build something that was a little more non-standard, not so much based on a grid where the architecture and buildings are just kind of piled on top of each other on hillsides and stuff. The game as it is, it doesn't handle any of this very well. And the solution I came up with at the time was just really kind of a lot of custom placement of houses and buildings. I have to use a lot of static assets here because the way the building lots sit on the landscape, they just flatten out everything and it really distorts hillsides and it doesn't look right. I'm also stuck using the same assets over and over and over again. For the historical neighborhoods, the really only option I have is the Mediterranean set. The European waterfront housing is really the only assets I have available for like residential housing. There have been some really amazing looking assets that have come out for like Latin America and South America or just more impoverished nations. And I've been using them as they come out, but I've also been kind of stuck using the same things over and over again. At this point, I'm not sure how many episodes I've recorded where I showed this building technique, and I think it's getting a little repetitive. And if I'm being honest, it's not really adding anything new to this series either. Also, it's difficult to think of like unique history for every section of the city. There's 400 years of history in Monte Palma, and I didn't really realize it at the time I started, but 400 years, that's a lot of history to cover. And I'm not always going to be able to have a historical element to go with every single section of the city I'm building. So what I've decided is, moving forward, I think a lot of these areas on the map around Monte Palma, and there's quite a few of them now, a lot of this stuff is just going to be completed off camera and filled in, and I'll keep you updated as it's completed. But I need to move on to more interesting parts of the city to build. Otherwise, it's getting really repetitive and dull for me. So I gotta figure out a way to make this interesting again. Which brings me to what I'm actually going to be building for this episode. I realize as I'm working on this, there's a major event that is about to begin starting next week. And even though I'm no sports fan, I do happen to live in one of the host cities for this event, and it's become rather hard to ignore it. Of course, I'm talking about the World Cup. And I thought it might be fun if sometime in its past, Monte Palma tried to put in a bid to host the World Cup. So I'm going to go ahead and try to imagine what that might look like if Monte Palma built out infrastructure to try to host a World Cup event in the past. I think it's kind of fun that we've already established in the history that the citizens of Monte Palma are rather passionate about the game of football. And we also know that the country of Monte Palma is flush with cash with all the dubious banking practices that take place within its borders. So the early 2000s seems like a good time period for this to happen. Of course, I need a football stadium worthy of such an event. And there just happens to be one on the mod store. I'm going to go with this one here. Fun fact, this stadium here was one of the locations for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. Of course, the stadium is going to be the main focal point for the build, but we also will need a lot of other infrastructure to go along with this. I'm using a custom road here, so that's why things are not lining up properly. I will come back and replace the roads as I go here. My first idea for parking lots was to use these ones, but as soon as I put them down, I realized that simply was not going to be enough parking. So I'm going to delete those out and replace them with something a little more substantial. When I added everything up, I think I had parking spots for around 2,000 cars, which still wouldn't be adequate for a stadium this size, but in game, I think it's more than sufficient. It's more about the look than the actual function. I was always planning to use this area for industrial use, and I still need the industrial workplaces. I have a huge labor shortage in Monte Palma. I think we're somewhere around 40% unemployment, which is really unacceptable, and I really do need to fix it. So I'm going to rebuild the industrial areas here, make them fit a little better. I do want this to be cleaner industry, so I'm going to go with one of these distribution center assets. These are wonderful. These come with all these custom prop trailers in the back here, have all sorts of different logos and sizes and shapes and stuff. Really, really nice. I got to do something about this road layout in here. This is just a mess. So I'm going to dezone everything and just redraw the roads as well. I did want a couple of office buildings. My first thought here was to use this Eastern European one. I eventually get rid of this. I don't really like the color. It doesn't really fit with what's being built down here. I'm using the mod to expand the industrial zoning, so I'm zoning this area with light industrial so it won't produce too much pollution. Monte Palma is throwing a lot of cash at this project, and they're not just going to stop at a stadium. They're going to build a lot of supporting infrastructure around it as well. I'm using this asset here. It's a gymnasium. It's a custom asset. It's a beautiful building. I'm going to reimagine it maybe as a convention center or some sort of auditorium adjacent to the football stadium. And now on to something I wasn't planning to build at all for this episode, some public transit. And I thought some very expensive light rail that would connect the yet to be built airport to the stadium and eventually to the central plaza, I thought that would be the best option here, since Monte Palma has no objection to throwing tons and tons of cash at this project. It's also a great excuse to use this custom elevated tram stop here. I love this asset. Right here, I want to expand it, I want to extend it, I want to make it symmetrical, like a mirror image of itself on both sides of the stadium. What I realized that wasn't going to work, but what I can do is place one functional station here. And with this asset, it also comes with a bunch of parts. So here I could just assemble them together and create my own custom station with them, which is just great. Now, like I said, I wasn't planning on building this sort of transit infrastructure in Monte Palma. I'm still a little unclear exactly what public infrastructure Monte Palma has other than the ferry service. Right now it has nothing. It felt in keeping with the type of nation that Monte Palma is that the transit services would be kind of lacking. But as we approach modern times, like, the 2020s, perhaps that's changed, and maybe this is the start of it. Or perhaps this is just a vanity project that just goes from the airport to downtown and nowhere else. And that also would seem very fitting for a country such as Monte Palma. I got totally sucked in here trying to make this as symmetrical as possible. It took a few tries, but I think I got it as best as I could. Now, I wasn't planning for a tram network through downtown Monte Palma, so I don't really have anywhere to put it without ripping up stuff that's already been built. So unfortunately, it's going to have to be an underground service. Not my first choice for building something like this. I would rather put a little more thought into it. We could also imagine that the country of Monte Palma, there might be sections of the downtown where they would prefer the tourists didn't really get a good view of. So underground service might be a better option here. Also, for the historic public plaza at the center of town, there might be a lot of public backlash to any visual changes to that, so also that might make more sense for it to be underground for that location as well. Okay, time to switch out this office building. I'm going to go with this one instead, which I think the architecture kind of fits better with what's being built around here. I'm not sure, but I think I might have already used it in the city. So what I'm going to be doing here is using StarQ's advanced building control here to create a static version of it and splice it together to create a brand new building. thing I really like about this asset, it comes with a ton of custom props. All these custom trailers, different shapes and sizes, which I can use now throughout the entire build. I'm also going to be spending some time adding some custom surfaces, expanding the paved surfaces around the industries here to match up with the roads, just extending some of the existing surfaces, just make sure everything makes visual sense. I'll just be doing some light detailing around this area. It's not the main focal point, so I don't need to be spending a whole bunch of time detailing this out. Monte Palma can have some pretty horrendous traffic at times. going to be redrawing and switching out some of the surfaces around the stadium here just to match it up to what I've built around it. I did add a park maintenance facility down here. I am in need of park maintenance, but for this purpose down here, I'm imagining this to be the maintenance facility for the stadium and the surrounding complex. My first thought here was to go with some vanilla grass surfaces, but as I build this out, I really don't like them, so eventually I will switch these out with something a little more natural looking. At this point, it was looking really good, but it felt like it was missing something, and I felt like what it really needed was a bit more vertical height here, just to set it off a bit more. So I'm going to add a building to act as a hotel. I'm going to go with this one here. This is a beautiful asset. It has beautiful views of the actual Monte Palma that the whole nation is named after. In fact, the entire stadium is right at the foothill of it, which I think is a perfect location for this. Now, what I didn't realize is this asset supports 1,100 residents, which I don't have infrastructure for down here. We do have a transit system, which comes in very handy for this, but I am going to have to add a few more infrastructure buildings down here to support these people who are going to start moving in here. Right now I have a lack of high schools, so I'm going to be going with the French one here. I think the architecture kind of fits in with everything else that's been built down here. With so many people moving into the neighborhood, I'm going to restrict all street parking here. This will force the cars to use the parking lots, which has the advantage of making it look like something's actually taking place at the stadium. So win-win. I'm also going to be using this university asset here. I don't actually have a proper university yet, and the reason I'm going with this one here is it doesn't necessarily immediately scream out university, so I can sneak in a bit of education and also have architecture that kind of fits in with everything else that's being built down here. I also don't have enough fire coverage, so I'm just going to add a small fire station to the backside here. And I'm falling behind on police coverage as well. I'm going to go with this really nice, I've thought about this fire headquarters, but I don't know about that one. I am going to go with this one. I always like this one. I love the architectural details on the facade of this one. And of course, with the hotel and the stadium and all the people now that are down here, this also seems like a perfect location for a shopping mall. I'm gonna go with this Japanese one here. I really like the style of it. It kind of has the look of an outlet mall. Okay, so I had to make a few choices here about where to put the underground transit stops that are gonna cut through downtown Santa Marina. And I'm just gonna try to fit them in where I can. Of course, I need to put one in the central plaza. This is next to all the major tourist attractions, and it's also just a very short walk to the train station. So it makes perfect sense to have one here. And our final stop is going to be right across the street from our ferry docks, which also makes sense. I really do need to finish detailing our Parliament buildings here. I've just been putting it off and putting it off, but another thing to add to the list. Okay, I'm just going to connect up the network here. I just put a trams depot off camera here. It's temporary. It's going to be out by the airport, and I haven't really thought too much about the airport quite yet. I just wanted to get something down here so it's now functional and people can actually go ahead and use this. And there are already people waiting for transit, which is really good to see. Like I said earlier, I wasn't really planning to build a transit system, so I'm going to have to come back and put a bit more thought into this, like custom trains and stuff like that, but that'll be for another episode. Okay, just a bit of final detailing here to tie everything together. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for sticking around to the very end. It's always appreciated. For an episode I wasn't planning on recording, I think this has turned out exceptionally nice. I'm very happy of how this looks. Not at all what I was planning for down here. I had something else in mind entirely, but I am happy with how this has turned out, and I think it's a great addition to the city of Santa Marina. Now, I was supposed to be out of town, and I am finally going to be leaving town tomorrow, and I will be out of town for a week. So there will be a little bit of delay for the episode for Redmont coming up next. Anyway, I will see you all in the next episode. Everybody take care, and I will see you all later. Bye.